at this crisis, and what does it really what really lies ahead for these countries and the policies that their governments are supposed to take in near future? We'll talk about all of this in this edition of Insight. Joining me in the program is Professor and Dean with Jindal School of International Affairs, Dr. Sriram Cholia. We are also joined by Dr. Ram Gopal Agarwala. He is Distinguished Fellow with Research and Information System for Developing Countries. He was also formerly associated with the World Bank. And we are joined by Mr. Preranjan Dash, who is the Managing Editor with Financial Chronicle. Welcome to the program, Mr. Dash. Let's start the discussion with you, Dr. Agarwala, since we know that this is not the first time that France is facing a similar situation, but certainly the timing at all is not right, because this is the third time in the last 4 years, and it certainly doesn't send good signals.
Well, not just France, Eurozone or Europe in general is in bad shape. It is a great recession. It's almost like Great Depression, but prolonged over a long period. And unless there is a change of policy, I think this agony will continue. And in my opinion, the root of the problem is this austerity bug. The idea that you can solve the problem by belt tightening, this is just not working. And somehow, we need to revive Keynesianism, the good old Keynesian.
Okay, France, especially a recession in France, which is the Eurozone's second largest economy, certainly exacerbate the situation in the whole region and for its neighbors and for the partners. How do you look at the present state of affairs?
Shalini, last year when, is just at the mercy of the investor community. I mean, they are all still calling the shots, credit ratings, the whole worry about public debt exceeding 90%, I think it's like 95% now of GDP, and I think they're so dependent now on German largesse and stimulus that they've had to conform to some of these deep budget cutting and so on. So they have left them in the lurch, and it hasn't worked. What they have tried to do is try to ameliorate it somewhat through the banks, and it has added to the debt burdens of the states. This is what they call the doom loop, where the insolvency of the state is connected to the insolvency of the banks. So now they're trying to overcome it through the European Central Bank to directly bail out banks rather than go via the national governments. But there's so much resistance to a banking union and all these supranational entities. So one is bad fiscal monetary policies domestically. The other is, there's a structural interdependence of all these economies because it's an integrated single market, but without a common fiscal policy. So what has happened is that they're all, there are like 3 tiers emerging. One of the more fiscally responsible ones which are doing better, like Germany, and then France is now joining Italy and the rest of the Mediterranean economies at the bottom in very, very dire straits. So what is happening is there's also a flight of capital. Economies are also reeling. So, they have very few choices, and it's a structural mess. When we go back to 1999, when they had the Maastricht Treaty and the creation of a common currency, the euro, there was so much euphoria. But what people did not realize that it was probably too hasty, given that if you have monetary union without some kind of shared responsibilities among the larger and the smaller powers within this union, you will have a day when there is absence of leadership and total policy paralysis.
Probably a similar situation is, the glimpses of it can be seen presently. Mr. Dash, what would you like to say about the state of affairs? France is certainly in a very, very bad shape, 12.2% this year. Things are really going out of hands, and much can be also attributed to the new administration in France.
Well, the situation in France is, you see, nothing that has happened. It was quite predictable that Europe as a whole, and Eurozone in particular, has been in a deep crisis, has been known for quite some time. And there was no miraculous recovery. That was Eurozone as a whole. In fact, European Union as a whole, the 27 nations, all of those in 2012 were stagnating, zero growth. So there is nothing surprising that France has got into this. If you look at the big four economies within the Eurozone, or even outside Eurozone in Europe, even take UK, then none of them are doing well. Germany, which is the largest of the lot and which is supposed to bail them out, itself seems to be in deep trouble. So, a growth of 0.6%, which is what the real question is that whether this European crisis is going to suck the entire world economy into another crisis, So the double dip recession which has happened in Europe, will the world economy also get into a double dip recession? That fear 6 months ago was very real, and it was appearing that perhaps the world has got over the worst. But with news such as these coming in and the European recession actually accentuating, one would fear whether, because today if you look at it, it's a 3-speed economy. Global economy is 3-speed. On one side you have the emerging economies, including India, which are expected to grow by over 5% in 2030, and then you have US, the deep-rooted government finances problems with that are there, and they are somehow trying to revive growth. That may help revive the growth. So that is the second speed where these three, but there are risks involved with the Japanese effort which has been done. So US, Canada and Japan in that category, and in this third category, Europe, if you look at it, which is government economies or
But
the emerging
also
economies, but also the US economy.
the US economies. We'll talk about that aspect. We'll take a very short break in Insight. Please stay tuned for